All right, we're live. Let's talk day 5 recap of Oaklawn Park. We had kind of a lot going on yesterday. I'm going to kind of skip ahead to the later races. I know there was some stuff that happened in the first 5 races of the card, including a horse I'm interested in coming back, and probably one that I'll write about in the Brisnet analysis if she shows back up at this meet. But yeah, I want to kind of get into these later races because some discussion as far as race 6, Taraz, kind of catching the eye of a lot of people. And of course, with the Kentucky Oaks, obviously looking in that direction. So let's kind of start there with race 6. And obviously going into this race, we had a 4-horse field, and just on paper, she just kind of looked the dominant factor in this race. I know it was the first race around 2 turns, which obviously is something that, maybe a little bit sketchy for horses, but for the most part, she looked like one that was going to handle the more ground, and you could just kind of tell that's sort of the way that she'd been trained, having those first couple races before stretching her out. So kind of all around going into this race, this was her race to lose. And at first, when I watched the race, and I saw like all the hype afterwards, like, it was amazing. And I was kind of just like, yeah, it was, she was supposed to win. She won, there was that kind of stuff. I went back, I watched it this morning, and it still wasn't like one of those races where I'm like, superstar, amazing, like right off that performance. But kind of looking at it a little bit differently, I like the effort as far as it for development purposes. I think it's a race that she could get a lot out of going those 2 turns, getting the experience, not having a super taxing race, yet still not super easy earlier. The number 1 horse, Serafina, she tried to win. I mean, credit to her. Like, she really, put in an effort, which I think actually works out well for Taraz, because sometimes these horses, if they're just given it completely their own way, it doesn't really do much as far as like education purposes and whatnot. So I think that was good. She was a little green getting out of the gate, kind of broke a step slow, broke on her left lead. And that's why, then obviously she gets that right leg and gets to the front, and, a little bit drifting out late. But I think, again, that's just kind of the experience. It kind of like looked like she was looking at something in the infield. So I think overall, it was, not the superstar performance that maybe some people are talking about it as, but really like a good race that you want to see for a developing horse going into the season, and of course, obviously to the Oaks. So we'll move on to race 7. And this is where things kind of get a little bit more, can get a little bit more technical, because dynamics played such a big part of this race outcome. And this was one of, obviously I wrote up Taraz. I did for Brisnet yesterday. I wrote 3 races, race 6, 7, and 8. And with this race, I was a little bit against the favorite. I thought he would be, who actually ended up winning, Karate. I'm really bad with names, and part of that is I think most, if you follow me, you know this. I never have the sound on. I'm always on mute because I'm doing trip notes, and I don't want to be distracted by the excitement of the race caller or anything like that. So a lot of the times that I don't know these names, it's because like I've never heard them, and so I should probably at some point kind of just do that if I'm going to be talking about these races and not just like writing them out or saying the 8-horse. So anyways, we'll go with the 8-horse here, Karate. He ended up winning the race. And again, dynamics playing a big factor in this. And what happened at the break impacted those dynamics. And so we're going to kind of look at this in 2 different ways. Right at the start, and, bad on Oaklawn Park or whoever was doing the head-on from this, because the head-on camera view, they actually cut away what happens at the start. But if you look at the pan, if you go back and watch the replay and you look at the pan, they kind of do that split screen. So you can see the pan, you can also see the head-on. So watch the head-on, and you'll see the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, and even to some extent the number 6, a little bit the number 1. But 2, 3, 4 primarily, major contact at the start. Really, really, really rough break. And for those horses, all of them, for the most part, really wanted to be forwardly placed, especially the 4. And so with those horses taking that contact at the start and not being able to get the lead, even though Karate had some pressure on the front end, it wasn't necessarily super fast fractions. And we'll compare that to race 9 later on. We kind of get to that part of the card. And so that kind of helped him as far as the front end. And it's, when you're talking about dynamics, you have to separate speed, rate, and contention, which we do on OptixPlot if you're an OptixPlot user and you see those two things, because they can be used together, but they also have to be looked at separately. So if you have, you have a contentious pace, right? You have multiple horses that are challenging for the front end, but they're not going very fast. You could still see kind of a best of the speed scenario. And sometimes it doesn't take much. You can have 2 horses going out to a super fast duel, and then that's setting up the race to kind of fall apart late. So again, we'll kind of compare the raw fractions going off what was on the video screen for race 7 and race 9, both run at the same distance, and for the most part, the same class. This optional claiming race, it's an N2X, but purse-wise, $88,000, and then the 9th race is an $86,000 purse. So pretty similar races as far as kind of comparing class to class. Otherwise, it's hard to compare class to class, race to race. But I think both those races, you had horses that were fairly evenly matched, and so we'll kind of mess around with that. But anyways, he was able to get the trip there, and maybe a little bit vulnerable going forward off that win. And of course, some of those horses that were taken out of the race, you have to keep that in mind going forward. I don't think there was really anybody that I really think is worth a follow. No. All right. So with that said, we'll move on. Race 8. So race 8, again, this is another race that I wrote up, and I thought into this race that Amy's Challenge would have a legit pace advantage. And mistake on my part. I don't know. I mean, going off her race in the past, she did have a distinct pace advantage. Though she's she's older. She's now a 5-year-old mare. And I think even to the rider's surprise, thought they were going to break on top and be the controlling speed, and she didn't quite get the lead. And then the rider's kind of like, oh, I gotta kind of get into this race. And sometimes that happens when horses, when they get older, they don't have quite as much pop. And so I think that impacted her. That she might, they might have to change running styles with her. She might have to kind of be more of a presser now. Maybe she needed the race coming off the layoff. We'll see. The winner of the race, Special Relativity. Smart on the trainer. Diodoro brought her right back in a week, cut back in distance off the pip, and got a great trip, perfect trip from her. Perfect trips, they can be a little bit play against next time. Other than that, I mean, there really wasn't anything. I thought, again, another name, Talbia, the number 1 horse, going into the race. I thought she had, at a price, I thought she was going to run a good race, and I like the effort from her. I mean, she didn't do enough in this event, but I think going forward, she's got some upside out of that race. I think that's kind of pretty much it on there. We'll get into race 9. Okay, so kind of before we get into this race, shorten this up a little bit, kind of messing around with some tabs in the background here. All right, so this race, I tweeted out about a couple minutes to post. Let me pull up my phone, let me read my tweet so and quote this exactly if I can. About the number 8 Sig Alert. Am I saying that right? I hope so. Sig Alert. Being Oaklawn Park race 9. I liked Sig Alert's return race, but a deep closer at a short price is sketchy. And so what I'm kind of getting at with that tweet, sometimes I'm not overly literal in this stuff, is where you have to separate yourself from a handicapper to a bettor, right? So, going into the race, if I'm riding up this race, this horse is in my selections, right? He's second off a layoff. He had a good race coming back. Obviously, he hadn't run in 462 days. The return effort was promising. He improved his speed figures. Those are all things that you want to see, right? So this horse obviously is a good fit in this race. Come post time, and when I tweeted this out, he's 2-1 and like a very, very, very strong favorite. Now his running style, even though he fits, is a deep closer. Now deep closers at a short price, they need a lot in their favor, right? They're going to need pace to run at. They're going to need a clean trip. Like they can't find traffic. They can't find trouble. These are all things that, you know, from a gambling standpoint, you have to think about. And so that was the reason for that tweet. All right. And so, you know, he showed a little bit of run. Obviously he didn't win the race. Obviously he didn't hit the board. But following up the race, I kind of followed that up with another tweet. NHC advice: find these opportunities and exploit them. Even if you swing and the miss, these are the races you must be involved in. And so basically what that's saying is that if you see a vulnerable favorite, you need to look at this race. And even if you do not pick the winner, this is a race. If you're looking for these bombs, you're looking for races to play, this is as good as it's going to get over that 3-day weekend. And these are the races that I, you know, guarantee the person that's going to win hits a race like this, a race you're going to have a super short favorite that shouldn't be as short as it is, even though, you know, the horse is capable. And something crazy happens. And so I got, you know, a direct message after kind of asking about this tweet as far as like, you know, please explain, like I would have never had the 5. And, you know, I wrote back, I'm like, it's not about the winner. It's not about the 5. The 5 ended up winning the race at almost 27-1, right? So we got that type of outcome that you're looking for at the NAC. But again, this isn't about the winner. In fact, if you I think if you ran this race again, even ran it again, you're going to see a different result. And that result is still probably not the 8. Like, it's just, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, he ended up saying, you know, I played the 2 and, you know, didn't go get the trip. I thought that horse probably ran the best race, was probably overall the right pick. And, you know, without Slogamo aboard, maybe gets the win. Talamo keeps breaking horses slow, and this being one of them. And he definitely, in this situation, cost this horse a better placing, if not the race. So a better race, that horse probably wins. The number 3, Royal de Hare. He raced inside. He had trouble along the inside. The rider was a little bit too passive. A better ride, a better trip. That horse could have easily won. He was super bet down. 12-1 morning line, ended up going off around 6.5-1. So that horse was pretty met in that spot. Candy Cornell, the 2nd place finisher, he ran a good race. He ran, especially, you know, given the rail, he was kind of taken out of his run style a little bit. He had shown some early speed in the past, but not quite on the lead. So considering you changed up his running style and he ran on the front end, maybe another horse makes the lead and he tracks behind and gets the trip that the 5 got, he could have easily won. You know, not at a huge upset, being close to 4-1, but again, that's kind of those are the type of races. So that's what I meant. That's what you want to look for, is being able to fully assess the favorite. I was going to talk about dynamics a little bit and kind of comparing race 7 and race 9. And just as far as like when you're talking about, you know, the 8 getting the trip in that race 7, as far as pace being contested and hot, almost a half a second slower. The 7th race opening quarter to the 9th race, they went faster opening quarter, and almost a full second faster for the half mile. 57-6 for, these are the fractions on the screen. I just wanted to keep it consistent with the video. To 58-3 for race 7. So that makes a big difference as far as a horse getting a trip. And Optix has we use like a slow, a fast. Instead of using a number, we use like a VS, very slow, S, you know, VF, very fast. So race 7, the opening half mile was a VS, very slow. Even still, the opening half mile here, an S. I thought the first quarter was pretty fast. We don't have that written down as of yet, but still pretty quick to go under 22 on this track for opening quarter with pressure is pretty fast. I think that's pretty much it to cover, kind of keeping the same time around 15 minutes. I think we got everything in there, just kind of checking these notes. Yeah, so again, another day. I wrote up, I believe it's the 8th race. I do this so many days in advance. I believe it's the 8th race. It's a 3-year-old allowance at Oaklawn Park, going through, let me see. Yes, I do have multiple monitors, and that's what I'm checking out right now. All right, it is the 8th race, and I did a horse by horse analysis on this, and part of that is, you know, for this race, obviously, I think it's playable. There's a horse. I think the I encourage you to read it, but I think the number 3 Little Menace is pretty solid. 7-2 on the morning line as far as being like a good favorite in this field. And a couple other price horses that I mentioned, but more than that, with these horses being 3-year-olds and this time of the year and being on the circuit, they're obviously kind of thinking stakes races down the road. So when I wrote up the horse by horse, I wrote up for this race, but then also kind of projecting going forward, just sort of what we'd like to see out of these horses today, sort of where they fit, if they belong, you know, class-wise going up or whatnot. All right, so that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow to recap today's Sunday card. All right, again, Brisnet, OptixEQ.com, and chat, DMs, Twitter, all that good stuff. All right, thanks for watching.